we have to get a special permit off the hospital to let Jonny come out of hospital for 2 hours to come do the gig, which he does on crutches.
Oh my fucking God.
Right then, team, welcome back. Welcome back to the Scratch Record podcast. Today we are joined by a band that has been to hell and back. They've been all over the gaff. They have recently come back with a new album, Satisfying the Ritual, as well as topping the physical charts with the EP in their comeback with Johnny Guitar. They've also supported Liam Gallagher around the UK and Europe since reforming. They've made some unbelievable festival appearances. We are joined today by Harry from Twisted Wheel and his cat that keeps appearing.
Yes, hello. I'm like some mad Bond villain, aren't I, with the jumping on screen. Yeah.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well. You know, having a nice, I suppose break from being in the making music at the moment. I mean, I'm making demos at home, but I'm not really, like everyone else, not playing live yet. So it's actually been a good time to recharge the batteries a bit.
Sound. I like it. Okay, well, we start to begin with some more, with some different ways of asking this question at the start. So we want to get into the depth of who Twisted Wheel are, just in case anyone who's listening hasn't heard of them. And so, how would you describe Twisted Wheel, who you are, what sort of music it's about, if you had to describe it to Elliot's nan? She's sat there on the sofa with a cup of tea and you've got to give her a quick breakdown of what Twisted Wheel are about. How do you do it?
I think Twisted Wheel, what it represents is it's a properly independent band that was once on a big major label, and then the classic rock and roll story of, you know, everything falls apart, numerous lineups, you know, it's a bit like The Fall, but just not quite as prolific, you know. But it came out of Saddleworth about 10 years ago. That's like sort of the rural part of Oldham, Greater Manchester.
Nice.
And in that area, it's quite a musical area. So if you listen to the first Wheel record, which obviously I wasn't in the band at that time, but the first record's got quite a lot of like folk influence, like the Pogues. And that a lot of that comes from the culture of where the band comes from. In Saddleworth, sort of that sort of Irish folk culture that exists in the local pub scene. So it's a band that it's the sound has developed, I think. Now the last album we did was more rock based, I think. I'd still had some punk in there, but yeah, I'd say Twisted Wheel are just one of those classic rock and roll bands. You know, there's not really other way to describe it. It has been to hell and back, as you said in the intro. So yeah.
No, definitely. I think that's what we've noticed, and I think that's what almost like the story we want to tell from here. So I think what we wanted to do is almost go chronologically and start with you personally. So 16 years old, getting into music and stuff like that. Did you have any like proper proficient bands from that sort of time, from the early days?
Interestingly, the school I went to was the same one that Jonny had been to a few years before, and Adam, the drummer. So Twisted Wheel was always like sort of the band of the area.
Yeah.
And I think that informed sort of the style of music we were playing as kids, which is really mad when you think about it, that the band ended up being in was like the band that actually informed the style of music. So a lot of the people I met at the time were all into Wheel, and we wanted to play that sort of that fast punk rock and roll music. I actually went to school with Luke O'Reilly, who's have you heard of the band Dirty Laces?
Yeah, they're really good.
See, Luke's a very good friend of mine, and he was always around that scene. So me and him have played gigs together quite a lot. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else who's kind of doing quite well. Well, yeah, there's a few of the Dirty Laces lads that I grew up through school and college, and we always used to jam together. And at the end of college, Ben Warwick, who's the lead guitarist in Twisted Wheel, he joined my second band, which were called Shadow Palace. And Shadow Palace were like, it's hard to describe. It's kind of like wiry post-punk with a lot of psychedelia in there.
Okay.
Nice.
It was very not mainstream
No.
at all. We did all right, but the main thing that came out of that was me and Ben left that band. I joined Wheel on bass, and then because I was a singer in that band, and then a couple of years later, when the guitarist in Wheel left, Ben joined, and we were kind of reunited, and then that created the spark, which led to us recording the third album, because we suddenly had a band where everything just fitted together.
All clicked.
It all clicked because me and Ben had worked together before, and we had that chemistry. And I'd been playing with John now for about 2 or 3 years, and Ben Robinson, the drummer, absolute powerhouse. So we were just like, it sounded like Wheel on Steads, basically. It was like a bigger, heavier version of Wheel. And and we were ready to not take over, but you know what I mean? We were ready to push things to the next level.
Yeah.
Which
definitely.
we almost did until COVID came along.
Hey, you did fucking bits. I think we want to get into that new album, but I feel like we want to touch on that story a little bit more first. So when you say you joined Wheel, how did that actually come about? Because you said that they're a big band with a big name for themselves, especially around Manchester way. So to just sort of join them, how did that actually come about?
I'd known Jonny for years because we always only lived round the corner from each other in a little village called Greenfield at the time. And I was playing still play it actually, a Sunday residency at a bar called Albion Tap. And then Jonny would come in and have a beer and stuff. And he was talking about, I'm getting a band back together, but it's not going to be Twisted Wheel. It's going to be a new sound, new members. And he said, the bass player's just left already. We've only done 4 rehearsals and the bass player's left. He said, I said, well, I'll do it for a bit. I'll step in, help you out for a bit till you find someone more permanent. Didn't have a bass. Had to borrow one. Didn't have a bass or a bass amp. And so I had to borrow them at first. So my cousin Dan, who was in the previous band, who played bass, he lent me his bass and bass amp, and got rehearsing. And we played about 8 completely new songs. And Jonny had a solo gig booked at Band on the Wall in Manchester. And he said, what would be great is if after I played the solo set, I reintroduce the comeback of the band under a different name. So when he'd finished his set and played You Stole the Sun, everyone was walking out the venue, and suddenly these 3 fucking random plonkers walk onto the stage. And everyone's like, what the fuck's this all about? And we ended up playing 8 completely new songs that nobody had ever heard before. So it was quite risky, really. And it kind of only half worked out because some people just fucking walked out. They'll be like, what's this all about? Because we clearly weren't playing Twisted Wheel songs.
Yeah.
What became apparent after a few months was the drummer couldn't play the Twisted Wheel songs. So we had to go. And then we got Adam back in. He was the original drummer.
Yeah.
And then we went on a run then, which was brilliant. We did the Comeback Tour, the Snakes and Ladders Tour. which was amazing. And then we brought the Johnny Guitar EP out, went to number 1 in the physical charts. And by that point, we're absolutely fucking flying because we've done the tour. We've just played Old Trafford Cricket Ground with Liam Gallagher and back. And Reading and Leeds Festival, Kendall Calling. And we're absolutely smashing it at that point. It looked like we were really going to go on to big things. And then trouble happens again. Lead guitarist leaves, Richard, Adam leaves, and then we've got to get 2 new members in, Ben and Ben. And then we've got to be ready for a new tour at the end of that year. So we were going to do a second UK tour, which was, we didn't stop for a year. But I feel like the changing of the members again just halted the momentum, and we had to kind of build that back up. Interestingly, the first gig we did as the new lineup was at Preston Cathedral. I think it was supporting the Sherlocks.
Oh, sick.
John was in hospital at the time. He had cellulitis in his leg.
Fucking hell.
Shit.
So the hospital was saying he can't do the gig. Bearing in mind, we had 2 weeks to prepare for this gig with no band. We had 2 weeks to go to this big gig with it was me and John. He was in hospital. We had no band. So what we're going to do? So I draft Ben in because I know him from previous ventures and I know it works. Get Ben in. And then we think, right, shit, we've got to get a drummer. So we've got a week to go by this point, right? So we get a drummer in to rehearse. He comes in, does not fucking work. So now we're at panic stations. We've got a week to go and we still don't have a band. So luckily our saving grace was that Benny plays guitar in the band can actually fucking drum as well.
Oh.
So he jumped on the drums. We didn't rehearse with Johnny, by the way. We didn't get to rehearse as a band for that gig.
Jesus.
We have to get a special permit off the hospital to let Johnny come out of hospital for 2 hours to come do the gig, which he does on crutches.
Oh my fucking God. That's ridiculous.
And we still did it, and it was mint. It was a really good gig.
Sick.
That's
so good.
We've heard some gig stories, but I think that might be the most scuffed gig I've ever heard. The most like last minute, scratch it all up. Like that's fucking hell.
Well, when you've got your lead guitarist on drums and your singers on crutches, and I'm trying to hold it all together as the bass player. But bear in mind, that was still my first year in the band, so it was hard, trying to make all these phone calls to and from hospital. Going, John, we've tried this new drummer today. He's not cutting the mustard. We're going to have to try another one. And, so it's mad,
That's crazy. And by that point, I bet that for you was like, I put the graft in, now I'm here for the long run. You know what I mean? Even that to happen within that first year, that's full balls deep.
I mean, there's another one where we were playing in Scotland, in Glasgow, and we all went out after the gig, but Johnny and Adam didn't come back. This was still in the first tour, Snakes and Ladders one. And what happened was Adam, obviously, he's a bit of a technophobe, so he had like an old brick phone. So we come out the hotel in the morning. We've got to be in Dunfermline the next day. So we get in the van and we thought, we'll have to just go and drive round and look for him.
Find him.
But you'll never guess what was fucking happening that day. Scottish Independence March. There's 1 million people marching. There's 1 million people marching through Glasgow. And we've lost our drummer. So we're just driving round the same fucking roundabout 40 times, just panicking, like, what are we going to do? Where is he? Eventually, he gets in touch because he bumped into a fan. And a fan luckily managed to contact us through social media, I think. They picked him up from this pub in Glasgow. So you can imagine what sort of band it is to be in. There's a lot. It's just
never gets boring by the sounds.
No, but you can understand now why I'm happy to have a little bit of a break.
Yeah. It's probably nice to have like 1 year on, 1 year off, 1 year on, 1 year off, and like have that recovery time in the future.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
That's incredible. So while we've done some scuff gigs, how about your best one so far of Twisted Wheel? What's been a standout that like was a really top gig?
Well, the Ritz in Manchester that we did in late 2019 was just with Wheel, things rarely go perfectly, but that went perfectly. For months we've been talking about what's going to be a good walk-on song for us, because we couldn't crack it. We had Rumble by Link Ray for a while, and then we thought, do you know what? We'll go for Beastie Boys, Fight for Your Right.
Nice.
And the crowd went mental to that before we'd even walked on stage. So you knew before you even walked on stage, this is going to be amazing. The unfortunate thing is them gigs, they only last an hour and a half, and you want them to last forever. You don't want to leave that stage. And I think for that reason, that's got to be the best gig we've ever played. I think the other one that stands out was probably at Finsbury Park when we supported Liam Gallagher, 2018. I think it was literally about 15 minutes before we went on stage, we got the news through that Johnny Guitar had hit #1 in the physical charts.
Wow.
So we're like, oh my God, sun's out. We're supporting Liam Gallagher at Finsbury Park. We've just gone #1 in the physical charts. Absolutely flying. And the funny thing was, at that Finsbury Park, there was 2 stages. So you had the main stage where I think Liam, Richard Ashcroft, DMAs, I think we're on, Wolf Alice, I think we're on as well. And I love Wolf Alice. And I didn't expect them to be on the bill because usually when you get them sort of gigs, you get very laddie sort of lineup.
Yeah,
so I was really happy to see Wolf Alice because I love Wolf Alice. And then there was our second stage, which was slightly smaller, still big stage. And all the bands that had been on before us that day, there'd been hardly anyone there. You're talking like handfuls of people, so we're shitting ourselves, absolutely shitting it. So we're thinking, what if no one turns up and this is like a mass anticlimax? So we find out the news about the EP 15 minutes before we go on. 15 minutes later, we walk on stage and there's just a sea of people. And we're like, fuck. And we're like, we did not expect that. And for that very reason, just everything just falling into place. Just made the perfect day, really. Yeah. I think them 2 gigs stand out, definitely.
Definitely. I mean, that's pretty good ones. As I say, we've also had some good gig stories, but both of those are pretty incredible. And I was there when you supported Liam Gallagher at the cricket ground in Old Trafford. And that was sick as well. Like, I think there was so much hype around that, around Liam Gallagher, but it's also had Richard Ashcroft on there as well. And just so much like Manchester pride there, I think, weren't there?
I think so. Interestingly, the Old Trafford one, the scale of it was great. But obviously, when we were on quite early in the day, the ground, I think, was only about half full. It was still obviously amazing. By God, I'm grateful to have been able to do it. But the thing is about Finsbury Park was that just was perfect. It was as many people as you could see, the eye could see. And, I still, have to pinch myself, look back at the photos. We're talking about physical things before.
Yeah.
I had to get some photos developed,
Nice.
After that weekend, I couldn't just have that thing where I flick through my phone.
No, proper photos.
You got to get something to look back on, haven't you?
Yeah, I like that. Definitely.
That's class. What was it? I want to know, what was it actually like to support them gigs and working alongside Liam Gallagher and almost a production like that? Because they're massive events. They're huge. They were a big spectacle just in the indie scene alone. Like, was that scale of event something for you, being fairly still fairly fresh in the band? Was that quite almost daunting for you?
The way my mind works and stuff like that is I don't get daunted by the big things in life. It sounds really strange, but you throw yourself at it. And I think someone came up with a good quote, and you don't want to be the lamb to the slaughter. You take your audience to the slaughter and you go on there and you give it some. And I think I've always carried that. I think with me, it's the little things in life that daunt me. Like, oh, I've got to pick up something from the post office, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
little moments of mad little moments of anxiety and stuff in life that just get me. But then big moments seem to, like, I don't know, they seem to kick something in me. And I think the rest of the band are like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we tend to perform well on the big stage. Whereas sometimes on, like, smaller stages, we've had some tough gigs for whatever reason. But in them big environments, we do seem to shine because there's that, like, sort of togetherness more. Because when you're on tour in, say, I don't know, Blackpool or something, playing your headline gig, what generally tends to happen is the band all go in, because the dressing rooms on the sort of venues we headline are a bit shit. So everyone just goes off and does their own thing, you know, finds a local pub, goes doing a bit of shopping, or goes to the chippy. So you're all separated for the whole day sometimes, and you just come back to the venue and do the gig. With them gigs, you arrive together, you go into the arena, you go through a big security process, and you're all together for that whole day. And I think that's what works more for us when we're together. But yeah, we do tend to revel on the big stage for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be. You're in the right industry for that to be to the right way to go. Like if you can play them big stages and slap it out, that's when you got the most eyes on you. And I think that kind of sits with a lot of people that are doing music and stuff. It is almost like that's a make or break point. If you can perform on them big stages and crack under pressure and not crack under pressure, then you're in the money. You're onto a winner, I think.
Yeah, no, and it's always very interesting to hear when you have bands. I think it was Kings of Leon. The singer Caleb doing an interview saying he, like, pukes up before some shows. You know, I've never felt remotely that nervous before a gig ever. So it's really interesting to see how people's different psychology works with stuff like that, I always think.
Absolutely. And that adrenaline rush is like, you know, it's that fight or flight response, isn't it? It's that automatic, like, am I here to fight and pull it together and actually crack on and get it done the best of my ability? Or, like, you know, some people freeze and, you know, some people throw up, and it's everyone works so differently. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the one thing I get nervous about, you were talking about the little things before, I mean, this could potentially become a big thing on stage, is that all these gigs we've talked about in these tours, I've only ever took one bass with me. Never a backup, right? So imagine something goes wrong with that bass, right? So occasionally I'll have these mad moments where I got on stage thinking, shit, what if something goes wrong with the bass?
Yeah.
I've got to replace them. So that, you know, I was talking about the little things, but that could potentially...
Yeah, that could be quite
I wouldn't say that's a little thing.
Yeah.
I'll just do a Nicky Wire and get the skipping rope out or something. If that,
you can pull something together, I'm sure.
That's the things that make me nervous, the technicalities rather than the occasion.
One, you've mentioned Jonny a lot, obviously lead singer, if people don't know. And I think I'm quite intrigued because, like, I've been a fan of Twist Wheel for a while now, and, like I was saying to her earlier, like, when I was first getting into, like, less mainstream bands, I suppose you'd say, like, that first Twisted Wheel album was one of the early ones that I heard and was like, oh shit, this is sick. So I've always, like, followed him as well on Twitter and stuff like that, and he just seems like a character, is how I'd say it. So what is he really like to work with? Like, positive, negative? Like, how have you found it? Because I feel like he's quite a big name in and of himself.
First of all, as a human and a person, I mean, what a lovely, lovely guy, you know. We've been through a lot of problems as a band, and, you know, he struggled with a lot of addiction. But underneath it all, you know, he's a really nice person at the end of the day, and that's just how I see him. You know, so there's times in the past where I've had to kind of distance myself from John a bit when he's been, let's say, having a hard time, and when you're in those moments like he's been in. One of the main factors of it is you do push your friends and family away a lot.
Mm.
And there has been times, you know, where we've had to have honest words with each other. But in terms of like a musical guy and like a person and a friend, you know, you couldn't wish for a better ally, really. You know, for course, sometimes he can be a bit unreliable or whatever. He's a great songwriter. And if you need to have a chat about anything, he'll talk to you. You know, he's a good listener. So yeah, that's my main thing with him, really. You know, we've had rocky moments, but you know, he's in a good place now, and that's the main thing. You know, we spoke about having the break from the band, and I said, John, don't worry about the pressure of the band or anything. You know, life and health goes above everything, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, really. We just send each other the odd message, and he's got a little musical project on the go.
Does he?
Which I don't know much about, but you know, it's a lot different. So he's working on that, and we're all working on stuff.
Yeah.
Which we're all hoping to like release stuff hopefully towards the end of this year anyway.
That's good. That's good to hear. It's nice to hear such positive words for so like in a world where there can be so many discrepancies and things where things get misconstrued by media and stuff like that, and people get painted in certain ways. It's nice to hear from like the actual inside what the person that you see in these, you know, news articles and whatnot, what this person's actually like from an insider.
Yeah, no, and like being in a band that's we've for 3 years we didn't stop.
Mm.
You don't stop for 3 years. You spend so much time with each other. You get to know a lot about each other. You know when to give each other space. You know when to like put your arm around someone. You know when to like distance yourself from them. But like, you know, like I said about the stories before about losing the drummer in Glasgow and having to do a gig with no rehearsal when the singer's only allowed out of hospital for a couple of hours and stuff, you know, stuff like that, you can laugh about it now, can't you? You know,
yeah,
stuff, it's memories at the end of the day. That's it. Everyone's in a good place. Whether the band comes back in the short term, long term, or never, you know, it's not massively important right now. It's just everyone's concentrating on the present, you know, and that's the important thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that is the important thing. And I think it's nice to see, I feel like with this new album, the music really did the talking. And I think maybe partly why it did so well is that sort of when it came down to it, like the songs are really good. And I think like I've seen him tweet before, and I know a lot of like people in the industry see like Twisted Wheel as a band that almost reached the top of indie, but then the mainstream media maybe didn't quite take to it as well. So have you, I know you've only been in it sort of more recently, but have you felt a bit like that like mainstream media has sort of not given Twisted Wheel the support it deserves? Or is it a bit like you're just happy with putting out and it does what it does?
I think the trouble is if in the modern day you have a reputation for being quite a hedonistic band, it can actually probably do you more harm than good. And the band got dropped by Columbia like way before I joined anyway, and part of the reason was the sort of off the stage stuff started to really affect everything in a negative way. And that it's probably that reputation from the early days, which means, you know, when we did the third album, we didn't have a label behind it. We had to do it all ourselves. I feel like there's a very positive outlook on the band from certain sections of the media who see it for what it is. You know, it's a band that means a lot it's a band that means a lot to like a cult following of people who were just invested wholly in the music and the energy of it. And there is another flip side to that where people just see Twisted Wheel in a completely negative light, which in some ways you can understand. But if we're talking about pure pound for pound music, then obviously music's all subjective, but I don't think anyone can doubt the quality of the music. You know, even if it's not their thing, I don't think anyone can turn around and say, you know, there's not something about them.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's interesting. I think that's like what we were saying earlier, is like always have been one of them bands that when you listen, as you say, you can't doubt it. And it's always, there's been quite a few bands, especially from that era, even like when the first album came out and that, there's a lot of good bands that I always mention Milburn from Sheffield, who
like Milburn.
Like who are class. And I listened to their first album and I'm like, I just can't believe that they didn't go on to do like massive things. And I think Twisted Wheel are another band in that ilk, and especially with the way the new one went. And I know me and I want to pick your brain about that a little bit as well, is because like the new album sort of shocked both of us when it came out. It's like the quality of that third album is like ridiculous. Like I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for it being a non-backed independent record for a band that hasn't, you know, that has done it, been picked up. The first debut album was recorded in LA with some mental producers and some crazy people around. And this one being it almost like Soul Yourself and self-funded and self-orientated as a band, I think that, and it come out the way that it did and how fucking brilliant it was, shows the raw talent that the band has. And it shows a level that I think there isn't. Some bands you can tell when they get the backing by records, everything changes, it goes up a level massively, and it really does. And there isn't many bands that can prove that once the label has been dropped, they still can produce this level of record that is like unparalleled to a lot of things in the scene for that subsection of the indie music culture.
Yeah, no, I think when you're an independent band, you can make the album that you want to make, and I think that was a positive side of it. I always speak to like John and Adam about the first album, and they look back on it and think they could have done it very differently. They didn't feel in complete control because Dave Sardi was the producer, obviously done like Oasis and stuff. He sees this young, small band come in of, you know, early 20-year-olds. And he obviously thinks, you know, I know better than these guys, you know, I'm going to sort of mold them how I want them to be. So Satisfying the Ritual was the album that we wanted to make.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly, because I think John wrote about 9 of the 11 and I wrote 2 of the 11. And what's interesting is that, especially the last track where Show Me, that's a complete different side to his songwriting that we'd never seen. But for me as well, coming out my old band where we'd been doing like psychedelic, heavy sort of post-punk, like Black and Blue, Wrong Side of the Road, the 2 that I wrote for the album, they were the first 2 songs I'd ever put out in any sort of medium that were kind of meant for sort of a popular audience, if you know what I mean. So it was interesting because John wanted to do some of his more introverted stuff, and I was ready, and I wanted to kind of come and do my big sort of punch the air stuff. So that really worked because we made a record that's quite diverse. And like Ghost Man is an interesting one because that was the only song to date that me and John have co-wrote where I did the music and he did the lyrics, and that came out really interestingly. So if we ever do make a record in the future, you know, it's genuinely really exciting to see where it could go. Because there's no rules now. You know, we're not signed. We don't even have a manager. We don't have anything. You know, I mean, Kev, John's dad, is technically in charge, but you know, he's down tools now because we're having a break, and so we're just floating. And you know, we can do what we can come back when we want. We can make a record that we want, and it's nice to have that sort of control, really. And
absolutely,
yeah, good to have a bit of ownership over your art, I'd say.
I think we've noticed that a lot with bands, and I think that personally, I know it's obviously really hard financially and stuff like that, but the whole independent stuff and having that control creatively, I think is the best for a band that is so artistically talented like yourselves. I think it really gives you a platform to be able to make any form of art, any form of way in whatever you want to do, instead of being like restricted to something that needs to be played on the radio, something that, everyone at the minute is focusing on things that are going to go viral on social media and all that jazz, because that's what's making the charts. All the charts are surrounded by that. And I think you can see it, like there is obviously some really, really good record labels that are allowing artists and bands to make music that they want to make because it's still sounding like them. Whereas, like, as you were saying, there is also some record labels where they're like, right, I'll put you with a producer and he's going to make you sound like this. And it seems to be that then people don't feel artistically gratified. They're not, they haven't got that gratification from the album. And it sounds like you lot really found that almost rewarding as a group.
We did, and the interesting thing was that as we were recording the album, the process kept changing. Because we had songs that we went into it where we had Nomad Hat, Black and Blue, DNA. I'm trying to think if there's any others we had. You know what? When we actually started recording the album, right, we only had 4 songs written for the album when we started recording it. So it took a long time to record. And there was a few moments where we're like, shit, are we going to get enough songs together? And then John obviously pulled Show Me out the bag, which he'd had for a while. The song Satisfying the Ritual just came from a jam. Which I didn't play on. I don't even play on that track.
You're joking.
Ben picked up the bass. I was on the way in my car, and there was jams of it. Next thing you know, we've got another track. We recorded it. I'm like, that's sweet. But stuff like that. We had discussions before we did the album as well. This can be our Sandinista. This can be our 30-track masterpiece to the world. Which never materialized. We got 11 songs over the line in the end. The last track that was wrote was we had 10 tracks. We felt we needed like a classic sort of wheel punk banger on there. So me and John we're up at the room, we're smashing away at ideas. We come up with a song called Lonely at the Top, which we wanted it to be like a big punk banger, but it was more like a sort of Echo and the Bunnymen new wave song, and that never made the album. And then the time was ticking, and then he came back, and then John came back with the practice room with this song called I Am Immune. And then that was like the missing piece of the jigsaw, because it needed that sort of 2-minute punk banger on there. And then once we'd done I Am Immune, we were confident we had a really solid record then. And Dean, the producer, Dean Glover, he's probably the busiest man I know. So the band he's working with at Vibe, and when you talk about producers that are creative, like the greats like Martin Hamnett and John Leckie, he's not as well known as them, but if he carries on like he is, he could be one of the great producers, definitely. And it's to that point with Dean, I wouldn't want to work with anyone else. I've worked with Dean now, and I think, he can transform a song just with a few subtle little suggestions and changes. And that's what you want. You want to work with a producer.
Yeah.
Not be told what to do by a producer.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that we've got into a couple of times, because I think before we started this and we started speaking to bands, I didn't even think about the producer on a track. Like if something came out and you liked it or you didn't like it, you just see it as the band's. And I think it's interesting when we've now sort of learned how integral a producer is, as an extra member of the band, because a good producer really does, I think, take those shells of songs or those demos of songs and either makes or breaks them. So I think that's really interesting. And I think you can tell. It's just something about Satisfying the Ritual that you can just tell that it was produced properly. And it's not even like a quality thing, but
all the little psychedelic elements in there, like the mad sounds in between songs and stuff. That's all Dean's work. That Dean's throwing all them little sounds in them, little fills in between songs and stuff. And if any keyboards are on the record, Dean plays all them as well.
Oh,
apart from the last track, where a lad called Tom plays the piano. He was actually turned out to be John's neighbour. He was in my year at school. He was always great at piano. And one day John just sent him the track and said, "Can you try some piano?" And he put some piano on it. And that was, at the time, we thought that was just a demo. We ended up putting the demo as on the album because it was an amazing bit of piano.
Yeah.
Like he's like grade 8, classically trained, so
fucking hell.
Yeah,
we can't turn that down on the album.
Nah,
yeah, I was going to say that's just a little notch on it, isn't it?
So he's got a little credit on the back of the album anyway for those who bought it.
There you go. Yeah. Cool. There's one more thing I want to press you on this because I know we've been going a long time. We try and keep them as short as possible, but it never happens.
That's all right. We can work in edit. We can work in edit.
I'm glad that when you said the ones that you wrote, one of them was Black and Blue, because that is definitely my favourite track on the album.
Oh, thank you.
No, 100%. I think it's a genius song. And like that was one that when I heard it, and it is really, really good. But I think lyrically, it's really sort of real. And I'm just wondering if like what is the inspiration for that track? Like, where did that track come from? Because it's not one that you can sort of just belt out. It's quite
it was. It's been around. It'd been around a few years, and obviously, like I said about my previous band being more interested in big psychedelic jams and fat riffs, there weren't any room for we did play it, but there weren't really room for that sort of track. I think the inspiration, it was a lot, and even more so in the last few years, there's been a big thing about mental health, and I think that's the crux of what the track is about. It's that I suppose it is about despair, and it's when I first wrote it, it sounded a bit Billy Bragg. So I wanted it to be like a political song about young people have had a bad deal, really. And in previous generations have had like affordable housing and secure jobs. And we're in the world now, I've been lucky to be able to get a mortgage and stuff, but it is generation rent. There's a lot of 0 hours contracts, and the toll that has on people's mental health was what I wanted to portray through a song. I think we did a good job of that, and we turned it into like the choruses sound quite Oasis-y, I suppose, don't we? We wanted to put a big chorus. Because it's quite catchy. But yeah, it's probably my proudest moment as an artist, being able to come into a new band and play a song to John and the rest of the lads, and we go, yeah, we've got to get that on the album.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. I'm grateful for that. But yeah, that's where the inspiration for that one came from anyway.
Did you ever want to boot John off and sing it live? Or were you going to try and take it? Or
well, we did have the idea at one point where I was going to start doing some lead vocals, but I decided against it. Singing live, I don't get much of a buzz from it. And I think, Johnny's the front man, leave him to do all that. He's a better front man than me, and he can do that. I'm happy having known, that I wrote that song or whatever, and we did it in the studio. That's enough for me. But obviously, when I start hopefully this solo thing up this year, I'll have to be back front and centre again.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'd love to see it.
So depends where I take it. I mean, I've got some songs which are along the same lines of Black and Blue. Which are quite standard sort of rock songs, and then I've been doing some more experimental, like some dub reggae and all sorts. So God knows if I'm going to do that. You know, I might have to get an alter ego or something. You know,
yeah, I like it.
That's
but
class.
it's you know, it's all positive. All forward thinking, really.
Yeah. So is that the plan? Is that the plan then for the next year for you? Like, just crack on with this solo project, get going with it, and try and get out on the courts and like do your gigs.
Well, absolutely. You know, it's trying to get in the studio with Dean. That's the hardest bit because he's that busy.
Is he? Say he was down at the Vibe Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, trying to get in with Dean's hard enough. You know, because he's that busy. You know, I only need a few. I'm going to just start off with maybe a couple of singles and get them done and see how it takes me. Been recording some home stuff as well, so stuff I've recorded at home during lockdown. You know, if I can get it release worthy, then why not? You know.
Have you got a band name?
Well, see, my name's not very showbiz, is it? So I might have to think of something creative.
Yeah, I think it is. The issue you'd run into is that there's just so many Harrys, and like we say this to people, like if you search it on Spotify, it's like you've got to compete with some pretty big Harrys, I think. But
yeah, so it might have like a high flying bird situation on our end.
Yeah.
You know? Harry Lavin and the high flying cats or something.
I like it. You got to run with that now.
You know, because the cat is ever present. You know?
Exactly.
Everything I do around the house, whether it be the cooking, writing songs, recording, watching telly, he's always there. So I've got to get some cat referencing somewhere.
The cat is ever present is quite a good name.
That should be a song.
You know, I'll have to take a mental note.
Yeah, the cat is ever present. I like that.
We're taking 20% of that traction,
Yeah,
whatever it makes us. So.
What was the last cat-related band name? Was it Curiosity Killed the Cat?
Curiosity Killed the Cat. Pussycat Dolls.
Pussycat Dolls, yes. Oh, he's back actually, speaking of.
Love it.
Brilliant. And then is there any plans with Twisted Wheel then for the next year or so? Are we still on the old hiatus and not much planned?
Yeah, no plans. I mean, it's not one of those where we've all fallen out or anything. So it's not like, oh well, it might happen. We're all on good terms, but we're all currently busy doing our own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if any sort of Wheel fan was kind of like listening and was wondering what was going on, I'd just say, you know, stick with it and listen. You know, have a good listen. You know, there's going to be some interesting music come out from the four of us separately. You know, keep your eyes peeled for that because there'll be some quite interesting stuff will come out of that. And then one day, you know, whether it be a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know. I mean, it was just after the COVID thing because we come back after the European tour was meant to go on Soccer AM.
Oh, sick.
And then Soccer AM said we couldn't come on because we'd been in Italy. So this was right at the start of the COVID thing.
Yeah.
And then the album comes out, we can't tour it, obviously, because of lockdown. It just knocked the stuffing out of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think by that point we were a bit burnt out anyway. But so that's probably the reason for the break. You know, we're burnt out and COVID did it.
Yeah.
So it's not that we've all fallen out. It's just we'll get it back together maybe. I can't say definitely, but I can't say never. You know, you don't know these things.
You got to tour that album. You got to get that played out to people.
Well, we've already sort of penciled in the name for that as a re-satisfying the ritual if it comes out.
There you go. You can't not do that.
So if it does, I think what the future will hold for us, we'll scale back touring a little bit because the tours we've done over the last few years have been really long, quite taxing on us, and that's been one of the reasons we've had sort of like health problems and John's problems that are well documented. You know, so shorter bursts, I think, of little smaller, probably bigger venues, smaller tours, and then we'll smash to the festival circuits again, maybe. But like I said, I can't say it will happen. I can't say it won't happen because I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm blaming Soccer AM then for this whole thing, so it's their fault.
Well, yeah, I mean, we at the time thought it was a joke because coronavirus at the time was
what even was it? Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, it's just this thing. It's just this glorified cold over in Italy. You know, we were like, you know. So I went on the radio, BBC Radio Manchester, did an interview, and we got back, and they were like, "Are you in isolation?" I went, "What do you mean I'm in isolation? I went pub yesterday." You know, because we'd only been in Italy. We didn't, in theory, come into contact with anyone. With any, you know, we had a case. You know, so it's only because we'd been in the country.
Yeah.
You know, none of us came back ill or with any symptoms of anything. So we did feel a bit aggrieved at the time, I must say. But you know, we do love soccer, and
yeah, man.
If we do decide to come back again with a new single or whatever, then I'm sure they'd be happy to have us on. You know,
definitely.
It's on the list. You know, it's on the list of things to do in the future.
You've made it once you've been on Soccer AM.
Top bins,
in my eyes. Yeah. If you play top bins on Soccer AM, there's no greater achievement.
Oh no. I could retire happy at that.
Brilliant. Well, I think that leads us perfectly into, like, we've got two little sections that we kind of get through towards the end of the podcast, and it's kind of where I'll give you the first section we've got is a scenario-based question section, and then the last section we've got is obviously getting you to bring us the new bands that you're listening to at the minute. So I'm going to get into scenario questions to start with. You've got the rest of the band to pick from that is like most likely to fulfill the role in this scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're all very off cuff and a little bit edgy. So
bear with us.
Bear with. Don't like. We've had
stuff like this.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people that have been a bit like, "What the fuck are you on about?" So So bear with, but they're good fun. They're good fun. So to start with, you're on tour with the band. You've booked this Airbnb. You're nice and you're all het up in there. You're all getting ready to go play the gig the next day. You have a night out the night before though. You're on the way home and there is a abandoned dog knocking about the street. And it takes kindly to the group. Who is most likely going to try and bring the dog home back to the Airbnb?
As an animal lover, possibly me. But I've always been a cat person, so maybe guitarist Ben, who has a big Rottweiler. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Ben.
Yeah.
I know John's dad has some couple of border terriers, so maybe it could be any of us, to be honest. But I'd say Ben guitarist Ben, because even though he thinks he wears Stone Island and he's a hard exterior, he's soft on the inside.
Nice. Right. So the world has come. It's all gone to pot. It's a shitstorm. It's like this. It's like COVID, but 10 times worse. Everyone's living underground. It's like the world is a barren wasteland, but you're living underground as a band. Who are you going to send out to fetch you food on an afternoon? They've got to go out. They've got to run, grab you some food and some stuff to last for the next couple of weeks. Who are you sending out that's going to fetch you stuff?
Well, this is easy. That'd be Jonny. For quite a dark reason that, he's lived on the edge many times where he's had to steal bits of food and stuff. So yeah, definitely him. I mean, I'd be useless. So I like the convenience of being able to walk in Tesco and just go on the self-checkout, in and out. Yeah. So yeah, definitely Jonny with that one.
Okay.
Nice. And the last one, you've been approached by the British government.
Shit.
They want you to lend a hand with their newest MI5 task. They want you to be a spy, essentially. Ooh. You've got to go and capture an extremely dangerous criminal. They're wanted for terrorism, all that jazz. You can only ring one. Is that the right thing to say? They wanted for terrorism and all that jazz. It's now
all that
changes the tone of it, I think.
It's just a bit of terrorism.
What's
a bit of terrorism?
Yeah.
You only get one phone call to make to a band member to help you go and capture this wanted fugitive. Who are you calling to go and grab?
Right, well, that's got to be guitarist Ben again, because he's had a few fights, you know, for whatever reason. I know he's had fights with people, so he's quite hard, you know. And I'd be the brains of the operation. So I've always had this great idea that I'm really good at like hiding, because I've worked out this route to a pub in the next village, where my valuable drinking time, I don't want it to be taken up by bumping into too many people. So I've worked out a secret route where I don't bump into anyone. So I'd like to think that I'd be quite good at planning the operation.
Yeah.
Whilst I'd just send Ben in to like grab him to the floor and he could tie him up and do all that jazz.
Yeah. the brains of the brawn, I like it.
Yeah, I think if you sent like me and John in or something, it'd be like watching the Chuckle Brothers. Send some brawn in, and then I'll just kind of oversee it. You know, big coat and a hat and some binoculars. Then I think that'd be quite good.
I could just picture you being great in Oldham, but as soon as it moves further afield, you're like, hold on.
This is the secret routes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be all right around here, you know, but put me in any other city and I don't have, what do they call it, pigeon power, where you can just kind of find your way around with, you know, let's just say I'm a regular user of Google Maps.
Nice.
you know, I'm not the best at like sort of finding my way without Google Maps, which is a shame really, because I kind of class myself as a man of the old world rather than the new world, but sometimes you just can't help it. You know?
Gotta be done, innit? Gotta be done. Well, that is the end of the scenario question. We've only got 3 tonight. We're only, you know, keeping it short and sweet because we literally have been going for fucking ages.
Yeah.
So at the last thing we do in these podcasts, we kind of get the person we're interviewing to kind of run off a band that they're listening to at the moment that they're really enjoying and they think needs a little bit more press than what they're maybe getting. So is there anyone that you've been listening to specifically you want to give a shout out to?
Well, yeah, the band, bit of bias there. The band I'm managing, Mercy Kelly, definitely. Because, well, I don't know, I'll say bias, but I think what they've got there, Jack the frontman, they've not managed to play it live yet because they're a lockdown band. Jack the singer, the dynamic between him and the lead guitarist, Adam, who's developed this brilliant, like, chorusy sort of, like, new wave sound on the guitar. Amazing. And I think they'll do really well. Another band that I've been doing a bit of journalism, actually, a bit of reviewing, because I like doing that as well. A band called the Skinner Brothers.
Yeah, we like them. We've had them in the playlist before.
I had a chat with Zach the other day, and yeah, their new EP. I've been lucky enough to have a listen. I think it's out. Yeah, tomorrow. I don't know when this goes out, but it'll probably be out by the time this podcast goes out. Yeah, Skinner Brothers. The attitude of it and the fact I love it. The fact I love about it was recorded in Zach's flat on like 100 quid worth of equipment. But you listen to it and you think, bloody hell, you know.
Yeah,
sounds quality. So yeah, I'd say Mercy Kelly and the Skinner Brothers. Are 2 bands that I would say I'm quite excited about. And also, I better get a mention in for Children of the State from Sheffield, because I think they have some fantastic songs and they've got a great image. So yeah, them as well.
Sick. That's perfect. Like
That is probably one of the most in-depth ones we've had. I like that a lot.
That's good.
That is good. Joe, have you been listening to anyone recently?
Do you know what? It's the first time in a little while that I've found a proper little gem that literally have just dropped their debut single and have like 90 monthly listeners. But it's really good. And I'm pretty sure they approached us and sent us it. And then they pushed us to listen to it again because I think I said I would and then I hadn't yet, which does happen. And you know what? People keep saying like, really sorry, don't want to seem pushy, but have you listened to it? And I was like, keep telling people to listen to it because like, yeah, I think sometimes, especially when we get sent so much, like sometimes we do just not listen to them. So remind people because like then I was like, okay, sick, I'll try it. And it's a band called KIWI. They're from the Lake District. It's like proper like indie pop, like a little bit like, yeah, like a bit quite classic indie rock pop stuff that's coming out. But the quality of it for a debut single is like one of the best I've heard in a while now. And it was one of those where we listened to a lot of songs and it's like, yeah, it's all right. And it came on and it's like within 5 seconds, you're like, yeah, okay. These lads are like...
I'll have to have a look at them.
Yeah.
I'll have a look into them.
Yeah, mate, KIWI. Just one song. I think it's called Addicted. And they're called KIWI, which I think is quite a cool name for a band. And yeah, they seem like top lads and they're doing everything in the right way, pushing their music, like putting really good stuff on Instagram. All their stuff looks really cool. And their debut single is really good. So yeah, I've got big hopes for them. They're good.
I'll have to have a look at them. Yeah, definitely. I love new music, you know. Yeah. I do love the old stuff, but it's I suppose you've got something to help you keep the faith, haven't you? And
yeah, definitely. And there's loads of it at the moment. Like, it's just so many bands that are coming up. The quality is ridiculous. Like you were saying, like what they can do from home means that there's so many bands releasing like studio ready songs. So yeah, it's sick. It's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And one I'm going to have to shout out, and it seems silly not to, and because they've released an EP very recently, and we've had them on the podcast before, but it's Callow Youth.
Callow Youth, yes.
Callow Youth, they are the boys.
Practice in our mill. In our, they were next door to us.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, I've actually got their first EP, which they've now taken. It was like a demo EP called The Vibe, and they've took it down of everything now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they gave that me when they were just starting. Good bunch of lads.
Top lads,
class,
yeah. We had them on
lads.
and we spoke about that actually and their decision to take it down and stuff. We had Nathan on and yeah, it was sick. They seemed like a class bunch of lads. Good band.
Yeah, I like Nathan. He came and watched us in Liverpool. Yeah, he's a top lad. He is. His dad's nice as well, actually. Don't know why I felt the need to mention. He came with his dad.
Because his dad's nice, make sure you go listen to their new EP straight to the end. It's got some really belters on that. That EP is brilliant, and it's so sick, and it's the first bigger project they've released on this new label, and it works. It sounds really, really class. Really, really good piece of work from them boys. Absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
top band.
They are superb band. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Harry. Thank you for coming on, mate. It's sadly the end of the episode.
Oh, I could have gone on all night. You could tell not been much social interaction. I'm not sure, have I?
Mate, it's perfect. Like if we could dream up someone to tell us stories in the way you have, it would be ideal, mate. You've been a pleasure. It was good fun.
Oh no, but thank you for asking me. You know, it's really nice to do these things. You know, meet new people. I know we're not in person, but you know, good.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when we're up that way, because we'll definitely be up that way soon for sure. We'll get something going. We'll go to the pub or something, get some beers and that, and try and maybe get one in person going at some point.
Oh, that'd be absolutely smashing, yeah. And I'll show you the secret route to the pub.
Yeah, shows you wander. Yeah, you might bump into us then on that wander.
Well, if you're with me, it's fine. If there's people that are not with me and then say, oh, where are you going? Right, just going there visiting my mum.
Superb, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. And if you're still listening, make sure you like the video, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, ring the bell, subscribe, all that shit. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the other side. Peace.
Cheers.
Ta-ra.